I am Elena, 38 years old, and I thought I was just going to a birthday party until my husband locked the car doors and told me my family was committing a crime. Before I tell you about the police raid and the secret recording that changed everything, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far our community reaches. The sound of a car door locking is usually something you don't even notice. It's a mundane, everyday sound. Click. That's it. But on that Sunday afternoon, sitting in the driveway of the estate where I had spent the happiest summers of my childhood, that sound was like a gunshot. Click. It echoed in the silence of the cabin. It wasn't the casual lock of someone parking to go inside. It was the heavy, deliberate lock of a fortress being sealed. I froze. My hand was still hovering over the door handle, my fingers just inches from the chrome lever. I was clutching my purse, the one I had bought specifically for this day because I wanted to look successful. I wanted to look like I had it all together for them. For my father. For my sister. I turned to look at Mark. My husband is not a man who gets rattled easily. He spent 15 years as an insurance investigator. He's seen people fake their own deaths, he's seen houses burned down for payout money, he's seen the absolute worst of human greed. He is the calmest person I know. He is my rock. But when I looked at him in the driver's seat, his knuckles were white. He was gripping the steering wheel so hard I thought the leather might tear. His jaw was set tight, a muscle jumping rhythmically in his cheek. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were glued to the rearview mirror, watching the front door of the massive colonial house we had just walked out of. "Mark?" I whispered. The air conditioning was humming, but I suddenly felt incredibly hot. A prickly, cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. "Mark, unlock the door. We can't just leave. We didn't even say goodbye to Dad. People will stare." He didn't move. He didn't blink. "Mark," I said, louder this time, panic rising in my chest. "You are scaring me. What is going on?" Finally, he tore his eyes away from the mirror and looked at me. And that's when my blood ran cold. I have never, in the 10 years we have been together, seen fear in my husband's eyes. Caution? Yes. Skepticism? Always. But never fear. Until now. "Elena," he said. His voice was terrifyingly even. Low. Controlled. "Listen to me very carefully. Do not look back at the house. Do not wave. Do not reach for your phone to text your sister." "Why?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "Did someone say something to you? Did Richard say something?" I called my father by his first name. I had for years. It was a habit born out of distance, out of the cold wall he had built between us the moment I decided I wanted to be an artist instead of a corporate shark. Mark reached out and put his hand over mine. His palm was damp. "They aren't throwing a party, Elena," Mark said, his eyes searching mine, begging me to understand without him having to scream it. "They are executing a plan." "A plan? What are you talking about?" I tried to pull my hand away, denial rising up like bile. "It's Grandma's 85th birthday. The balloons, the band, it's a celebration. The drink Chloe gave her," Mark cut me off. "The special smoothie she was spoon-feeding her because Grandma couldn't hold the glass? Yeah? So what? Grandma is frail. She's old." "Elena," Mark squeezed my hand, hard. I saw the residue on the rim. It was blue. A powdery, chalky blue. And I saw the way Grandma's pupils were pinned. "She isn't tired. She isn't senile." He took a deep breath, and the next words that came out of his mouth shattered my world. "They are drugging her, Elena." I blinked. The words didn't make sense. They hung in the air between us. That's crazy," I stammered, laughing nervously. "That's insane. Chloe is a nurse. She wouldn't." Dad wouldn't. Dad is drowning in debt, Mark said ruthlessly. And Chloe is wearing a Rolex that costs more than her annual salary. I checked the perimeter, Elena. The men at the doors? They aren't guests. They are private security. And the man in the gray suit talking to your father in the library? That's not a family friend. That's a notary. I looked at him, my mouth dry as dust. A notary? They have a timeline, Mark said, glancing at the mirror again. I heard them. 8 o'clock. They need her signature by 8 o'clock. They are keeping her sedated just enough to be compliant but awake enough to hold a pen. My stomach dropped. I felt like I was going to throw up. I thought of Grandma Vivian. My grandma. The woman who had taught me how to paint, who had hidden me in her room when my father went on his rages, who had been the only source of warmth in that cold, museum-like house. I pictured her sitting in that wheelchair, her head lolling to the side, that vacant smile plastered on her face. I had thought it was just age. I had thought it was dementia taking her away from me. But it wasn't nature. It was them. We have to go back in there, I said, my voice rising to a shriek. I reached for the lock. We have to get her. No. Mark grabbed my wrist. Think, Elena. Think. If we go back in there right now, what happens? They have 6 security guards. We have nothing. They will throw us out for causing a scene. They will tell the police you're hysterical, that you're the crazy daughter who hates her family. And while we are arguing with the cops outside, they will be forcing her hand onto that deed inside. So we just leave her? Tears streamed down my face. We just leave her with those monsters? We are leaving so we can save her, Mark said, starting the engine. The car purred to life. I have photos. I have evidence. But we need to be safe to use it. We are going to drive down the road, and you are going to call 911. And you are going to tell them exactly what I tell you to say. As the car began to roll down the long, winding driveway, I couldn't help it. I disobeyed him. I looked back. Through the tinted back window, I saw the house. It looked beautiful in the afternoon sun. Grand. Majestic. A symbol of everything my family cared about. Image. Wealth. Power. And there, standing in the second-floor window, watching us leave, was a silhouette. I knew that stance. I knew the rigid set of the shoulders. It was my father. He wasn't waving goodbye. He was watching to make sure the problem, me, was gone. I turned forward, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. Mark accelerated, the tires crunching on the gravel. Get your phone, Mark commanded. I reached into my bag, my fingers trembling so badly I almost dropped it. I unlocked the screen. The background was a picture of me and Grandma from 10 years ago, on my wedding day. She looked so sharp then. So alive. I'm dialing, I whispered. Tell them it's an emergency, Mark said, his eyes focused on the road, calculating, planning. Tell them a vulnerable adult is in immediate danger. I hit the call button. Ring. Ring. 911, what is your emergency? I took a breath, and for the first time in my life, I stopped being the daughter who just wanted to be loved. My name is Elena, I said, my voice hardening. And my father is currently poisoning my grandmother. But to understand how we ended up fleeing down that driveway with 911 on the line, you have to understand the trap. Because that's what it was. A beautifully wrapped, meticulously planned trap. And like any good trap, it started with bait you couldn't resist. It was exactly 7 days ago. A Sunday. I was standing in my kitchen, folding laundry. It was a mundane, peaceful afternoon. The sun was streaming through the window, hitting the pile of towels on the counter. Mark was in the living room watching a football game, cheering softly at the screen. It was the kind of simple, quiet life I had fought so hard to build. A life away from the drama, Away from the expectations. Away from them. My phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating against the granite. I reached for it casually, expecting it to be a client asking about a design mock-up or maybe a spam call about my car warranty. But the name on the screen made my breath hitch in my throat. Dad. I stared at it. The letters seemed to pulse. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. Not since the Christmas dinner where he told me that my career as an interior designer was cute but ultimately a waste of an education, and that I should have married a banker instead of an insurance investigator. I had walked out before dessert was served, and I hadn't gone back. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I should have pressed it. I should have let it go to voicemail and then deleted it. That's what Mark would have told me to do. But there is this thing about toxic parents. No matter how old you get, no matter how successful you are, there is a tiny child inside of you that just wants them to be proud. That just wants them to call and say, "I love you." I picked up. Hello? My voice was wary, guarded. Elena, his voice was rich, deep, and startlingly warm. It wasn't the cold, dismissive tone I was used to. How are you, sweetheart? Sweetheart. He hadn't called me that since I was 6. I'm fine, Dad, I said, leaning against the counter for support. Is everything okay? Is it Grandma? That was my biggest fear. Grandma Vivian was the only reason I kept any tabs on the family at all. She's fine, he reassured me quickly. Actually, that's why I'm calling. You know her 85th birthday is coming up next weekend. I know, I said. I sent a card and a gift. Well, that's just it, he let out a small, self-deprecating chuckle. We're throwing a party. A big one. At the estate. And, well, she's been asking for you, Elena. She wakes up in the mornings asking if you're coming over to paint. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I bit my lip. Dad, you know I can't. I don't think it's a good idea. Chloe and I don't get along, and you and I know, he interrupted, his voice softening. I know I haven't been the easiest father. And I know Chloe can be difficult. But this isn't about us. It's about your grandmother. She's 85, Elena. We don't know how many more of these we have. That was the hook. He knew exactly where to press. She misses you, he added, his voice dropping to a whisper. She really misses you. I think seeing you would do her more good than any medicine. I closed my eyes. I could picture her, sitting in the sunroom, her silver hair catching the light. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll come. Good, the relief in his voice sounded genuine. Bring Mark. We want the whole family together. Let's put the water under the bridge, For Mom. For Grandma, I corrected. Right. For Grandma. Next Sunday 2 p.m. Don't be late. When I hung up, I realized my hands were shaking. Mark had walked into the kitchen, holding an empty bowl of popcorn. He took one look at my face and set the bowl down. Who was that? He asked. My dad. Mark's eyebrows shot up. Richard called you? What did he want? Money? No, I shook my head, defending a man who didn't deserve it. He invited us to Grandma's 85th birthday party. Next weekend. He wants to make peace, Mark. Mark leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. The skeptic in him was fully awake. Make peace, he repeated flatly. After 3 years of silence? Just like that? He said Grandma is asking for me. Elena, Mark sighed, walking over and placing his hands on my shoulders. You know I support you. If you want to go, we go. But people like Richard, they don't just change overnight. They don't do peace unless there is something in it for them. He sounded different, I insisted, though a small part of me knew Mark was right. He sounded tired. Maybe he realizes he's getting older too. Maybe he wants to fix things before it's too late. Mark looked at me with that gaze that always made me feel seen, even the parts of me I tried to hide. Or maybe he needs something, Mark said gently. But we'll go. I'm not letting you walk into that house alone. Thank you, I hugged him, burying my face in his chest. But I'm driving, he said. And we keep our eyes open. Deal? Deal. I spent the rest of the week oscillating between excitement and dread. I went shopping. I bought a dress I couldn't really afford, a pale blue silk that I knew was Grandma's favorite color. I wanted to show them I was doing well. That I didn't need their money or their approval to be happy. But in the back of my mind, Mark's words kept replaying. They don't do peace unless there is something in it for them. I told myself I was being paranoid. What could they possibly want? I had no money for them to take. I had no claim to the business. The only thing of value in that family was the estate itself, and that belonged to Grandma. And Grandma was sharp as a tack. Or at least, she had been the last time I saw her. She was a steel magnolia. A woman who had run a real estate empire alongside my grandfather. Nobody could pull the wool over Vivian's eyes. I held on to that thought. Grandma is in charge. As long as Grandma is there, everything will be okay. Oh, how wrong I was. I didn't know then that the sharp woman I remembered was already gone. Not because of nature, but because of what they were putting in her morning tea. I didn't know that the party was actually a deadline. And I certainly didn't know that by accepting that invitation, I was walking straight into a crime scene. The drive to the estate took an hour, but it felt like 5 minutes and 5 years all at once. The closer we got, the tighter my chest felt. The house, no, the mansion, sat on 5 acres of pristine land. It was a massive white colonial structure with pillars that looked like they belonged on a government building. As we pulled up to the iron gates, a security guard with a clipboard stopped us. Name? He asked, not smiling. Elena and Mark Vance, my husband said. The guard checked a list, paused, and then nodded. Park around the side. Valet is full. Valet is full? I whispered to Mark as we drove through. How many people are here? The driveway was lined with cars. Mercedes, BMWs, Lexuses. It looked like a luxury car dealership. I glanced at our reliable, 5-year-old Honda Civic and felt a pang of that old insecurity. Don't let them see you sweat, Elena. Mark parked the car in a shadowy spot near the old oak tree where I used to have a swing. He turned off the engine and looked at me. Ready? No, I admitted. Game face, he said, giving me a quick kiss. Remember, we are just here for Grandma. Eat some cake, kiss the ring, get out. We walked to the front door. The house was draped in decorations, but not the fun, colorful kind. It was elegant, tasteful, and completely cold. White balloons. Silver ribbons. A string quartet playing softly on the porch. It felt less like a birthday party and more like a corporate gala. Or a funeral. As we stepped into the foyer, the smell hit me. Fresh lilies and expensive perfume. The scent of my childhood. Elena. A voice shrilled through the air, cutting through the music. I braced myself. Chloe. My younger sister came gliding down the grand staircase. She looked stunning, I had to admit. She was wearing a red dress that hugged every curve, her blonde hair perfectly blown out. But as she got closer, I noticed the details Mark had pointed out. The diamond tennis bracelet. The earrings that caught the light with a fire that cubic zirconia doesn't have. Chloe was a nurse at a cosmetic surgery clinic. She made decent money, sure. But this? This was $10,000 of jewelry on her wrist alone. Hi, Chloe, I said, forcing a smile. I opened my arms for a hug. She gave me one of those air hugs where her body didn't actually touch mine, terrified of wrinkling her dress. You made it, she said, pulling back and scanning me from head to toe. Her eyes lingered on my dress, assessing its brand, its cost. I saw the tiny smirk. Cute dress. Very vintage. It's new, I said, instantly defensive. Where's Dad? Where's Grandma? Dad is in the library entertaining the VIPs, Chloe said, flipping her hair. And Grandma is in the sunroom. But listen, Elena. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But her eyes weren't warm. They were hard. Don't expect much. She's having a bad day. What do you mean? I asked. She's confused, Chloe sighed, putting a hand on her chest dramatically. It's been getting worse so fast. The dementia. Some days she doesn't even know who I am. It's heartbreaking, really. So if she says anything weird, or if she doesn't recognize you, just roll with it. Don't upset her. Dementia? I frowned. Dad said she was asking for me. He said she was sharp. Chloe's eyes flickered for a millisecond. A glitch in the matrix. Dad is in denial, she said smoothly. You know how he is. He wants to believe she's fine. But I'm the one taking care of her every day. I'm the one changing her diapers and feeding her. Trust me. She's gone. I want to see her, I said, pushing past Chloe. Go ahead, Chloe called after me. Just don't get her worked up. We have a big surprise for her later and she needs her energy. I walked through the crowded living room. I didn't recognize a single soul. These weren't Grandma's friends from the gardening club. These weren't the neighbors. These were men in suits. Women in cocktail dresses who looked bored. Who are these people? I whispered to Mark, clutching his arm. Investors, Mark murmured, his eyes scanning the room. Real estate developers. Bankers. Elena, this isn't a party. It's a networking event. We reached the double doors of the sunroom. My heart was hammering. I was prepared to see her old. I was prepared to see her frail. But I wasn't prepared for what I found. The sunroom was Grandma's sanctuary. It was where the light was best for painting, where her orchids bloomed year-round. But today, it felt like a display case in a museum. She was sitting in her wheelchair in the center of the room, facing the window. She was wearing her best lavender suit, a string of pearls around her neck, and a corsage pinned to her lapel. She looked like a queen. A queen trapped in her own body. Grandma? I choked out, walking toward her. She didn't turn. She didn't react. I knelt beside her chair. Grandma, it's me. Elena. Slowly, painfully slowly, her head turned toward me. The breath left my lungs. Her face was pale, almost translucent. Her mouth hung slightly open, a tiny thread of saliva gathering at the corner. But it was her eyes that killed me. Those blue eyes, which used to sparkle with mischief and intelligence, were dull. Flat. Foggy. It was like looking at a house with the lights turned off. Ellie. She slurred. Her tongue seemed too heavy for her mouth. Yes, it's Elena, I said, tears instantly springing to my eyes. I reached out and took her hand. It was ice cold. I'm here, Grandma. I'm here. She blinked, struggling to focus on my face. She looked like she was trying to swim up through deep, dark water. Anna. She managed to whisper. Run. I froze. What? Run. She breathed. Bad man. What bad man, Grandma? I leaned in closer. Who? Suddenly, a shadow fell over us. There she is. I jumped. It was Dad. Richard. He was standing there with a glass of scotch in his hand, beaming like the father of the year. He put a heavy hand on my shoulder. You found her. Doesn't she look beautiful? I stood up, wiping my eyes angrily. Dad, she can barely speak. Chloe said she has dementia? Oh, it comes and goes, Dad waved his hand dismissively. She's just overwhelmed. Too much excitement. Aren't you, Mother? He patted Grandma's cheek. It was a patronizing, possessive gesture. Grandma flinched. I saw it. It was tiny, but she flinched away from his touch. She looked sedated, Richard, Mark said. He had stepped up beside me. His voice was casual, but I knew that tone. He was interrogating. Dad's smile tightened at the edges. She's on some new medication for her anxiety. The doctor prescribed it. Keeps her calm. You know how she gets. She looks too calm, Mark pressed. Are you a doctor now, Mark? Dad's eyes went cold. I didn't think insurance adjusters went to med school. Investigator, Mark corrected calmly. Right. Whatever. Dad turned his back on Mark, focusing on me. Elena, why don't you go get a drink? Mingle. There are some people I want you to meet. Important people. I want to stay with Grandma, I said. She needs to rest. Chloe appeared out of nowhere, holding a tumbler with a green liquid in it. A smoothie. It's time for her medicine and her nutrition. You guys are crowding her. I can help, I offered. No. Chloe snapped. Then she softened her voice, fake sweet again. No, sweetie, she only takes it from me. It's a routine. Go. Go have fun. Chloe wedged herself between me and the wheelchair. She put the straw to Grandma's lips. Drink up, Nana. Good girl. The way she spoke to her, like she was a dog, an obedient pet, made my skin crawl. Grandma clamped her lips shut. She turned her head away. Come on, Nana, Chloe's voice dropped an octave. It was a warning. She grabbed Grandma's chin, forcing her face forward. Don't be difficult. Drink. Hey. Mark stepped forward. Easy. Chloe glared at him. She has to take it. It's for her heart. Grandma looked at me. For 1 second, the fog in her eyes seemed to clear. It was a flash of pure, terrified lucidity. She reached out her frazzled hand and gripped my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Desperate. She squeezed 3 times. Squeeze. 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 My heart stopped. That was our signal. When I was a little girl, if I was scared or if Dad was yelling, Grandma would hold my hand and squeeze 3 times. It meant, I love you. Be brave. Or sometimes, it meant, danger. She doesn't want it, I said, my voice trembling. She doesn't know what she wants. Chloe hissed. She forced the straw into Grandma's mouth. Grandma gagged slightly but swallowed. Let's go, Elena, Dad steered me away by the elbow. His grip was painful. Let Chloe do her job. Come. I want you to meet Mr. Henderson. I looked back as Dad dragged me away. Chloe was wiping Grandma's mouth, smiling that plastic smile. Grandma's head was already starting to droop, the brief spark in her eyes extinguished by whatever was in that green sludge. I felt sick. I felt helpless. Mark, I whispered as we moved away. Did you see that? I saw, Mark said. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the exits. Keep smiling, Elena. Act normal. I need to take a walk. Mark disappeared into the crowd. I was left alone with my father. So, Dad said, guiding me toward a group of men standing near the fireplace. This is my daughter, Elena. The artist. He said artist the way one might say unemployed. Nice to meet you, a man with a thick neck and a thicker gold watch shook my hand. Your father tells us this is quite the property. It's been in the family for 50 years, I said. Prime development potential, the man said, looking around the room as if he were measuring it for demolition. 5 acres, zoned for residential. You could put 20 luxury condos on this lot. I pulled my hand away. Grandma loves her garden. She would never sell. The men exchanged a look. A look that said, the girl doesn't know. Dad laughed, a loud, booming sound that didn't reach his eyes. Elena is sentimental. But Mother is evolving. She realizes the upkeep is too much. We're looking at options. Options? I turned to Dad. What options? This is her home. Not now, Elena, Dad hissed through his teeth. Meanwhile, Mark was moving through the house like a ghost. He wasn't mingling. He was hunting. He walked past the caterers standing by the kitchen door. He noticed their earpieces. He noticed the bulge under their jackets. These weren't waiters. They were muscle. He walked past the library door, which was slightly ajar. He paused, pretending to tie his shoe. Inside, he saw a man, the notary, laying out documents on the mahogany desk. Thick documents. Legal-sized. Is the date correct? He heard the notary ask. Yes, Dad's voice came from inside the room. He must have slipped away from me while I was distracted. And the medical evaluation? Dr. Evans signed it this morning, another voice said. A deep, raspy voice. Declared her competent as of 9 a.m. Whatever state she's in tonight doesn't matter. The paper says she's lucid. Good, Dad said. We need the signature on the deed and the power of attorney by 8 p.m. Once the guests start eating cake, we wheel her in here. Done deal. And if she resists? She won't, Dad said. Chloe is handling the dosage. By 8 p.m., she'll be pliable. She'll sign anything we put in front of her. Mark stood up slowly. His heart was racing, but his face remained a mask of indifference. Timeline, 8 p.m. Objective, steal the house. Method, chemical submission and fraud. He checked his watch. It was 6:45 p.m. He had barely an hour to stop a multi-million-dollar robbery. He needed proof. Hearsay wasn't enough. If we called the cops now, Dad would produce the fake medical report signed by a corrupt doctor. They would claim Grandma was fine, just old. They would win. He needed something undeniable. Mark scanned the room. Chloe was nowhere to be seen. The green smoothie was gone. Where was the kitchen? He saw a swinging door. A waiter came out with a tray of champagne. Mark caught the door before it swung shut and slipped inside. The kitchen was a chaotic scene of catering staff prepping appetizers. Steam rose from pots, and the smell of roasted garlic filled the air. Nobody noticed Mark at first. He blended in, moving with purpose. He scanned the countertops. Trays of shrimp. Bottles of wine. And there, in the far corner, near the service entrance, was Chloe. She was standing with her back to the room, hunched over a small prep table. She wasn't plating food. She was working on something else. Mark moved closer, hiding behind a rack of hanging pots. He pulled out his phone. He switched it to video mode. Chloe was holding a mortar and pestle. Beside her was a prescription bottle. An orange bottle with no label. She dumped 2 blue pills into the mortar. Crunch. Crunch. Grind. The sound was distinct. She ground the pills into a fine blue dust. Then, she opened a carton of yogurt, Grandma's favorite brand. She stirred the powder into the yogurt. The blue vanished into the white cream, leaving just a faint, barely visible tint. Add a little honey, she muttered to herself. Mask the bitterness. She squeezed honey into the mix and stirred again. Mark zoomed in. The camera focused perfectly on the unlabeled bottle, the blue dust, and Chloe's face. It was undeniable. She was preparing a chemical cocktail. Suddenly, the service door opened. A maid walked in carrying a stack of dirty plates. She saw Mark. "Excuse me, sir," she said loudly. "Guests aren't allowed back here." Chloe spun around. Her eyes went wide. She saw Mark. She saw the phone in his hand. Mark didn't panic. He lowered the phone, slipping it into his pocket in one fluid motion. He put on his best drunk uncle smile. He swayed slightly. "Oh, sorry." Mark slurred his words. I was looking for the bathroom. Too much champagne." Is this the bathroom?" Chloe narrowed her eyes. She looked at the phone in his pocket, then back at his face. She was calculating. Did he see? Did he record? Or is he just a clumsy idiot? "The bathroom is down the hall," Chloe said, her voice icy. She stepped in front of the yogurt bowl, blocking it from view. "Get out." Right. Sorry, Chloe." Mark gave a goofy wave and stumbled toward the door. As soon as the door swung shut behind him, the act dropped. Mark straightened up. He checked his pocket. The video was saved. He had the smoking gun. But he also knew something else. Chloe was suspicious. She would tell Richard. They would move up the timeline. He had to get me. He had to get us out of there. He scanned the crowd for the blue dress. He saw me, cornered by the real estate developer. He walked straight up to me, grabbed my arm, and pulled me away mid-sentence. "Hey," the developer protested. "Family emergency," Mark said shortly. He leaned into my ear. "Code red, Elena. We are leaving. Now." "What? Why?" I whispered, confused by his urgency. "Don't ask questions," he whispered back. "Just walk. Hold your stomach. Act sick." And that leads us back to the click of the lock. Back to the driveway. Back to the moment I realized my family wasn't just dysfunctional. They were dangerous. 911, what is your emergency?" The operator's voice was in my ear. I took a deep breath. I looked at Mark. He nodded. "My name is Elena Vance," I repeated clearly. "I am at 400 Oakwood Drive. My grandmother is being held against her will and drugged by her family members who are attempting to force her to sign legal documents. We have video evidence of the poisoning." "Ma'am, are you safe right now?" "We are in our car," I said. "But they have private security. You need to send officers. Fast." "Officers are dispatched," the operator said. "Stay on the line." I hung up the phone and looked at Mark. "They're coming," I said. Mark didn't smile. He was watching the house. "Good," he said. "Because look who just came out the front door." I looked. It was Chloe. And she wasn't alone. 2 of the security guards were with her. She was pointing at our car. She was screaming something. The guards started running toward us. "Mark!" I screamed. Mark slammed the car into reverse. Tires screeched. We shot backward down the driveway just as one of the guards reached for the door handle. We spun around and tore down the street, leaving the estate, and my grandmother, behind. But we weren't running away. We were regrouping. And as I watched the house disappear in the distance, I knew one thing for sure. The party was over. The war had just begun. We drove until the house was just a speck in the rearview mirror, but Mark didn't stop until we reached a small, gravel turnout about a mile down the road. It was hidden behind a thicket of pines, invisible from the main estate entrance. Mark killed the engine. Silence rushed back into the car, heavy and suffocating. The only sound was the ticking of the cooling engine and the frantic thumping of my own heart. "They saw us," I whispered, my hand still gripping the dashboard. "Chloe saw us." She knows. She suspects, Mark corrected, his voice calm but tight. He unbuckled his seatbelt and turned to me. She suspects we saw something, but she doesn't know for sure. And right now, suspicion is making them sloppy. They're going to rush. He pulled out his phone and played the video he had taken in the kitchen. I watched it on the small screen. My stomach churned. There was my sister, my flesh and blood, grinding pills like a common criminal. The blue dust falling into the yogurt looked innocent, like sprinkles on a sundae, but I knew it was poison. What is that stuff? I asked, pointing at the screen. Do you know? I'm 90% sure it's haloperidol or something similar, Mark said. Antipsychotics. In high doses, for an elderly person with a weak heart? It causes extreme confusion, lethargy, and compliance. It's chemical submission, Elena. They turn off her brain so they can use her hand to sign the deed. I finished his thought. Exactly. The notary is there. The guests are witnesses. Once she signs that paper, it's over. It doesn't matter if we prove she was drugged later. Unwinding a legal transfer like that takes years and thousands of dollars we don't have. Plus. Mark hesitated. Plus what? Plus, at that dosage, it might kill her, Mark said softly. Respiratory failure. If she dies after signing, the estate goes to Richard immediately. If she dies before, it goes to probate, and he has to fight you for it. They need her alive just long enough to hold the pen. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Where are the police? I called them 10 minutes ago. They're coming, Mark said, checking his watch. But listen to me, Elena. This is the hard part. When they get here, Richard is going to put on a show. He's going to be the grieving, concerned son. You have to be cooler than him. If you scream, if you cry, you lose. Just then, we heard it. The wail of sirens cutting through the quiet country air. 2 squad cars flew past our hiding spot, lights flashing, heading toward the estate. Mark started the car. Let's go. We follow them in. We pulled out and tailed the police cars back up the long driveway we had just fled. My anxiety shifted into a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't the scared little girl anymore. I was a witness. We parked behind the squad cars. The blue and red lights washed over the white pillars of the mansion, making it look like a crime scene in a movie. 2 officers stepped out of the first car. One was an older man, heavy-set, looking tired. The other was younger, sharp-eyed. I jumped out of our car. Officers? I'm the one who called. The older officer looked at me, then at the house. You reported an elder abuse situation? A hostage situation? Yes, I said, my voice shaking slightly despite my best efforts. My father and sister are drugging my grandmother inside. They are forcing her to sign over her property. The front door opened. And there stood Richard. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was standing in the doorway, wearing a look of utter confusion and concern. He held a napkin in one hand, like he had just been interrupted from a pleasant dinner. Officers? Richard called out, his voice steady. Is everything all right? Has there been an accident? I looked at Mark. He gave me a subtle nod. Here we go. Part 8, the gaslighting, estimated word count, 1,100 words. The older officer, whose name tag read Sergeant Miller, walked up the steps, his hand resting near his belt but not on his weapon. Sir, we received a call from your daughter, Miller said, gesturing back at me. She claims there is a medical emergency here. That a Miss Vivian Vance is being medicated against her will. Richard looked at me. He didn't look angry. He looked heartbroken. He looked at me with such pity that for a second, I almost doubted myself. Oh, Elena, Richard sighed, shaking his head. He looked back at the officer. I am so sorry you had to come out here. My daughter, she's been having a hard time lately. Financial troubles. Jealousy issues. That's a lie. I stepped forward, pointing a finger at him. He's lying. Show them the video, Mark. Mark stepped up, holding his phone. Officer, I have video evidence of his daughter, Chloe, crushing unmarked pills into the victim's food in the kitchen less than 20 minutes ago. Sergeant Miller paused. May I see? Mark handed over the phone. Miller watched it. Richard didn't even flinch. He just stood there, watching the video over the officer's shoulder with a polite interest. That? Richard chuckled softly when the video ended. Officer, that is crushed aspirin and a melatonin supplement. Mother has trouble swallowing pills, she has dysphagia. Chloe, my daughter who is a licensed nurse, crushes them for her. We do it every night. It was blue. I shouted. Aspirin isn't blue. PM formula, Richard said smoothly. Look, officer, my mother is 85. She has dementia. We are having a small birthday dinner. If you want to come in and check on her, please, be my guest. We have nothing to hide. But please, keep the noise down. She scares easily. He stepped aside and opened the door wide. It was a masterstroke. By inviting them in, he stripped away their suspicion. A guilty man barricades the door. An innocent man opens it. Sergeant Miller looked at me, then at the open door. We need to do a welfare check, ma'am. Stay here. I'm coming with you, I said. No, Richard held up a hand. Officer, I don't want her upsetting Mother. Last time she was here, she caused a scene that took Mother 3 days to recover from. Stay here, ma'am, Miller ordered me. I watched helplessly as the 2 officers walked into the house with my father. Mark put a hand on my shoulder. Wait for it, Mark whispered. It's not over. 10 agonizing minutes passed. I paced the gravel driveway, kicking stones. The party music inside had stopped. I could see guests peering out of the windows, whispering. I felt like a pariah. Finally, the door opened. Sergeant Miller walked out. Richard was right behind him, looking vindicated. Ma'am, Miller walked down the steps to me. We spoke to your grandmother. And? I asked breathlessly. Did you see her eyes? Did you see the drool? She appeared tired, Miller said, adjusting his belt. But she was responsive. She knew her name. She knew it was her birthday. She confirmed that her son and granddaughter are taking care of her. She's drugged. I screamed. Of course she's compliant. That's what the drug does. We checked her medication log, Miller continued, his voice getting sterner. Everything seems to be in order. The nurse on site provided documentation for all supplements. The nurse is the accomplice. I yelled. I was losing it. I was becoming exactly what Richard wanted me to be, the hysterical, crazy daughter. Elena, stop, Mark whispered, pulling me back. Ma'am, Miller stepped into my personal space. I understand you are concerned. But making false 911 calls is a crime. There is no evidence of abuse here. Just an old woman eating cake with her family. I suggest you leave the property before the homeowner decides to press trespassing charges. I looked at Richard. He was standing on the porch, smirking. He mouthed 2 words to me. Bye-bye. Come on, Elena, Mark said firmly. He grabbed my arm and practically dragged me back to our car. We can't leave. I sobbed as he shoved me into the passenger seat. They won, Mark. They won. Not yet, Mark said, starting the engine. We backed out of the driveway as the police cars drove off in the opposite direction. Richard watched us go, then turned and slammed the heavy oak front door. Click. Another lock. This time, locking us out for good. Mark drove down the road, his face grim. Why did we leave? I demanded, wiping mascara from my cheeks. We should have stormed in there. And got arrested? Mark snapped. It was the first time he raised his voice. If we got arrested, Elena, who saves her? Nobody. He drove for another mile, past the spot where we hid before, and turned onto an old logging road that ran parallel to the estate's backwoods. The sun was setting now. The sky was turning a bruised purple. What are you doing? I asked. Mark turned off the headlights. The car crawled through the shadows of the trees. The police did their job, Mark said. They followed protocol. Richard knows protocol. He beat them with paperwork and a calm demeanor. So it's over, I slumped in my seat. No, Mark stopped the car deep in the brush, hidden by the overgrown foliage. Protocol failed. The law failed. So now we stop playing by the rules. He turned off the engine and looked at me. The shadows of the trees danced across his face. Do you remember the basement window you told me about? He asked. The one you used to sneak out of when you were a teenager? I nodded slowly. The coal chute. But it's been painted shut for years. Paint chips, Mark said. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a flashlight and a small toolkit he always kept in the trunk. And I'm really good at breaking things. He looked at me. Are you ready to commit a felony to save your grandmother? I looked at the house in the distance, its lights twinkling through the trees like a deceptive fairy tale. I thought of Grandma's hand squeezing mine. 3 times. Yes, I said. Let's break in. Part 9, Ghosts in the Night, estimated word count, 1,000 words. The woods behind the estate were thick and unkempt. Richard spent money on the front lawn, the part people could see, but he let the back rot. Just like he did with his family. We moved through the underbrush in silence. Mark led the way, using the flashlight only in short bursts to avoid detection. The air was cooling rapidly, the smell of damp earth and pine filling my nose. My silk dress snagged on briars. My heels sank into the soft mud. I stopped, kicked them off, and continued barefoot. I didn't care. The cold mud felt grounding. It reminded me that this was real. This wasn't a party anymore. It was a rescue mission. We reached the edge of the tree line. The back of the mansion loomed above us. The kitchen windows were lit up, silhouettes of catering staff moving back and forth. The sunroom, where Grandma was dark now. They must have moved her. Where would they take her? Mark whispered. The library, I said instantly. That's where Dad does business. That's where the desk is. Okay. Library is on the east wing. We need to get into the basement, cut the power to the security cameras if we can, and get up the service stairs. We crept toward the old coal chute. It was hidden behind a row of overgrown hydrangeas. I pushed the bushes aside. There it was. A small, grime-covered window at ground level. It looks tight, Mark assessed. I can fit, I said. Mark used a screwdriver to work the edges of the frame. The paint was old and flaky. Crunch. Crack. The sound seemed deafening in the silence, but the noise of the party inside, the bass of the music was louder now, masked it. With a final grunt of effort, Mark pried the window open. It swung inward with a rusty groan. Ladies first, Mark gestured. I slid feet first into the darkness. The smell of musty paper and old furnace oil hit me. I dropped down, landing on a pile of old drop cloths. Mark followed, landing with a soft thud. We were in. The basement was a maze of storage boxes and old furniture. It was the graveyard of our family history. I saw my old bicycle. I saw Mom's old vanity table. Richard threw nothing away, yet valued nothing. Upstairs, Mark signaled. We crept up the wooden stairs that led to the kitchen pantry. I could hear voices on the other side of the door. Can't believe he invited the cops, a woman's voice. Chloe. He handled it, Dad's voice. He's a genius. Now, is she ready? Mark and I froze on the stairs, pressing our ears against the wood. She's out of it, Chloe laughed. A cruel, ugly sound. I gave her a booster shot after the cops left. She's staring at the wall. You could put a contract for her soul in front of her and she'd sign it. Good, Dad said. Get the notary. Bring him to the library. We do this now. 7:30 p.m. They were ahead of schedule. Footsteps moved away. Mark pushed the door open a crack. The coast was clear. We slipped out of the pantry and into the service hallway. We need the library, I whispered. Wait, Mark pulled me into a small side room. It was Dad's home office, not the grand library, but his private workspace where he paid bills. We need leverage. If we walk in there and just stop them, they'll kick us out again. We need to know why they are doing this right now. We know why. Greed. It's more than that, Mark said, turning on his flashlight and scanning the messy desk. Richard is desperate. You don't risk a felony kidnapping for extra pocket money. You do it because you're drowning. Mark started rifling through the papers on the desk. Unpaid bills. Final notices. Mortgage default warnings. Look at this, Mark held up a letter. Foreclosure notice. The bank is taking his condo. And his car. He's broke, I whispered. That's why he needs the estate. To sell it and pay his debts. Keep looking, Mark opened a drawer. And then he froze. He pulled out a thick folder. It wasn't a bill. It was something far worse. Oh my God, Mark breathed. What? He laid the folder open on the desk. It was a life insurance policy. Taken out on Vivian Vance. 6 months ago. The payout was $5 million. But that wasn't the worst part. Mark pointed to the medical declaration attached to the policy. Read this, he commanded. I squinted at the text. Patient has been diagnosed with terminal heart failure, life expectancy less than 6 months. Grandma doesn't have heart failure. I hissed. She has a murmur. She's healthy. Not according to this forgery, Mark said, his voice shaking with rage. And look at the beneficiary. Richard Vance. They aren't just stealing the house, Elena, Mark looked at me, his eyes dark. They took out a policy that pays out when she dies. And they forged medical records to make it look like she was dying anyway so no one would ask questions when she suddenly passes away in her sleep. The room spun. They're going to kill her, I realized. The words felt like stones in my mouth. Once they get the house, they don't need her anymore. And the insurance money, it's a bonus. That's why the dosage is so high, Mark said, clenching his fists. They don't care if the drugs stop her heart. In fact, they're counting on it. We have to stop them, I turned toward the door. Now. Wait, Mark grabbed a stack of papers from the trash can next to the desk. Look at this. He fanned them out. They were sheets of notebook paper. On every line, someone had practiced a signature. Vivian Vance. Vivian Vance. Vivian Vance. The handwriting started shaky and got more confident near the bottom. It's Chloe's handwriting, I recognized the loop of the V. She was practicing forgery just in case Grandma couldn't hold the pen. Take it, Mark stuffed the papers into my purse. Take the policy. Take the foreclosure notice. We have the motive, the method, and the fraud. He looked at me. Ready to crash a party? I took a deep breath. I kicked off the barefoot feeling. I stood tall. Let's go get her. Part 10, The Confrontation, estimated word count, 1,200 words, the library doors were closed. Heavy oak doors that muffled the sounds inside. Mark and I stood outside them in the hallway. The party was still going on in the backyard. I could hear the distant murmur of guests and clinking glasses. They were celebrating, completely unaware that a murder plot was unfolding 20 feet away. Mark put his hand on the doorknob. He looked at me. On 3? No, I said, placing my hand over his. On 1. I didn't wait. I turned the knob and threw the doors open with a bang that echoed like thunder. The scene inside was like a tableau of guilt. Grandma was slumped in a leather chair behind the massive desk. Her head was lolling back, her eyes half closed. Dad was standing over her, holding a pen in her hand, forcing her fingers to grip it. Chloe was standing on the other side, holding the document flat against the desk. The notary, a nervous-looking man with a comb-over, was watching, his stamp hovering in the air. They all froze. Get away from her! I screamed. My voice was primal. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Dad dropped Grandma's hand. The pen clattered onto the desk. Elena? Dad looked at me, then at Mark, then at the dirty bare feet and the mud on my dress. How the hell did you get in here? We broke in, Mark said, stepping into the room and closing the doors behind us. He locked them. Click. Just like you're breaking the law. You're trespassing. Chloe shrieked. Dad, call security. Go ahead, I challenged, walking straight toward the desk. Call them. Call the police again. Please. Because this time, we aren't leaving. I looked at Grandma. She blinked slowly, trying to focus on my voice. Anna, she croaked. I'm here, Grandma, I said softly. Then I turned to the notary. Sir, put that stamp down, I said. Unless you want to be an accessory to attempted murder and insurance fraud. The notary went pale. Murder? I was told this was a standard transfer. Look at her. I pointed at Grandma. Does she look competent to you? Does she look like she knows what she's signing? She's just tired. Dad roared, stepping between me and the notary. Get out of here, Elena. You're ruining everything. I know about the insurance policy, Richard, Mark said. He held up the folder we stole. The color drained from Dad's face. It was instant. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. I know about the $5 million, Mark continued, walking closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. I know about the fake heart failure diagnosis. And I know that this. He pointed to the yogurt bowl on the side table, is filled with enough haloperidol to kill a horse. You have no proof, Dad stammered, but his confidence was shattering. We have the video, I said. And we have these. I pulled the practice signature sheets out of my purse and threw them onto the desk. They fluttered down like confetti. Chloe's handwriting, I said. Practicing Grandma's signature. Why practice if she's willing to sign, Dad? Chloe looked at the papers, then at Dad. You said you burned those. Shut up, Chloe. Dad snapped. Oh, so you admit it? Mark smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. The notary stood up. He grabbed his briefcase. I'm leaving. I want no part of this. Sit down. Dad grabbed the notary's arm. You're not going anywhere until this is stamped. Let him go, Richard, Mark warned. No. Dad's eyes were wild now. Desperate. He grabbed the deed. He grabbed Grandma's limp hand again. She signs. She signs right now. He jammed the pen into Grandma's hand and started forcing it down onto the paper. Grandma let out a low moan of pain. Stop it. I lunged forward. Chloe stepped in my way. She pushed me hard. Stay back, you jealous witch. I stumbled back, hitting a bookshelf. But I didn't fall. I pulled out my phone. Mark, handle Dad, I said. I'm going live. Part 11, Livestream Justice, Estimated Word Count, 1,000 words. I opened Facebook. I hit the live button. I had 500 friends on Facebook. Cousins. Aunts. Neighbors. My dad's business partners. The local church group. 3, 2, 1, live. Help us, I said to the camera, flipping it to show the room. I am at the Vance estate. My father, Richard Vance, and my sister, Chloe, are physically forcing my 85-year-old grandmother to sign a deed. I pointed the camera at the desk. On screen, thousands of miles away and right next door, people saw Richard Vance gripping his mother's hand, his face twisted in rage. They saw Grandma's head rolling on her shoulders. They saw Mark wrestling Richard's hand away. They have drugged her, I narrated, my voice shaking but clear. We found life insurance policies. They are trying to kill her for money. Please, anyone watching, call the police. Send help to 400 Oakwood Drive. The viewer count ticked up. 10, 50. 100, comments started flying up the screen. OMG, is that Vivian? Call 911. I'm calling the sheriff right now. Richard, what are you doing? Put that phone away. Chloe screamed, realizing what was happening. She lunged at me, clawing at my face. I dodged, but she grabbed my hair. Mark! I yelled. Mark shoved Richard back against the wall. He spun around and grabbed Chloe by the wrist, pulling her off me. Look at the phone, Chloe. Mark shouted, pointing at the screen. 300 people are watching you assault your sister. Smile. Chloe froze. She saw the viewer count. She saw the names in the comments. People she knew. People she worked with. Chloe, how could you? I'm telling the clinic board. She went white. She backed away, covering her face. No. No. Dad was panting, leaning against the bookcase. He looked at the phone, then at the deed on the desk. It was unsigned. It's over, Dad, I said, pointing the camera at him. The whole world is watching. You ungrateful brat, Dad spat, straightening his tie. You think this proves anything? I'm her son. I'm protecting her assets from you. Is that why you have a foreclosure notice in your drawer? Mark asked. Dad flinched. Suddenly, a sound cut through the tension. A splash. We all turned. Grandma Vivian was sitting up. Her hand was hovering over a glass of water on the desk. She had knocked it over, splashing water all over the unsigned deed. The ink ran. The paper turned to mush. Grandma blinked. The commotion, the shouting, the adrenaline, it had pierced through the drug fog for just a second. She looked at Richard. Her eyes were watery, but fierce. Bad boy, she rasped. It was a whisper, but in that silent room, it sounded like a gavel coming down. Mother? Richard stepped forward. Mother, Get out, Grandma said. She pointed a shaking finger at the door. And then, we heard it again. Sirens. Not just one car this time. A chorus of them. Mark looked out the window. It's not just the police. It's the paramedics. And the fire department. The live stream had worked. The community had responded. You might want to call a lawyer, Richard, Mark said, crossing his arms. Although, I don't think you can afford one. Part 12, The Fall, estimated word count, 900 words. The next 20 minutes were a blur of flashing lights and shouting voices. The library doors burst open. This time, it wasn't Sergeant Miller. It was the sheriff himself, followed by 4 deputies and a team of paramedics. Step away from the victim. The sheriff barked. Richard put his hands up. Sheriff, thank God you're here. My daughter has gone crazy, she broke in. Save it, Richard, the sheriff said. He held up his phone. My wife is watching the livestream. I saw you forcing the pen. Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Paramedics rushed to Grandma. They checked her pupils. They checked her pulse. Heart rate is 45 and dropping, one paramedic shouted. Pupils unresponsive. Possible opiate or sedative overdose. We need to transport immediately. It was haloperidol. Mark shouted to them. And scopolamine. Get the antidote, the paramedic yelled. They loaded Grandma onto a stretcher. As they wheeled her past me, her hand fell off the side. I grabbed it. I'm coming, Grandma, I sobbed. One relative only, the paramedic said. I looked at Mark. Go, Mark said. I'll stay here and make sure these two don't destroy any more evidence. I ran after the stretcher. As I climbed into the back of the ambulance, I looked back at the house one last time. Deputies were handcuffing Richard. He was shouting, his face red, threatening to sue everyone. Chloe was sitting on the floor, weeping, not out of remorse, but out of self-pity. A deputy was reading her rights. The guests, the investors, were standing on the lawn, watching the spectacle. The networking event of the season had turned into the scandal of the decade. The ambulance door slammed shut. Click. We sped away into the night. I held Grandma's hand the entire way to the hospital. Hold on, Grandma. Just hold on. Part 13, The Aftermath, estimated word count, 1,000 words. It took 3 days for Grandma to wake up fully. The doctors said the dosage Chloe gave her was enough to kill a man twice her size. If we hadn't intervened, if Mark hadn't told the paramedics what drug it was so they could administer the right counteragent, she would have gone into cardiac arrest that night. I sat by her bed every hour. Mark brought me coffee and changes of clothes. On the third morning, the sun was streaming through the hospital blinds. I was dozing in the chair. Elena? I jumped up. Grandma was looking at me. Her eyes were clear. The fog was gone. Grandma. I hugged her, careful of the 4 lines. Where am I? She asked. You're in the hospital, I said. You're safe. Richard? She asked. Her voice broke on his name. I took a deep breath. Richard is in jail, Grandma. And Chloe too. She closed her eyes. A single tear leaked out. She didn't ask why. She knew. Somewhere, deep down, she had known for a long time what her son was capable of. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you years ago. It's okay, I smoothed her hair. It's over now. The legal fallout was swift and brutal. Mark gave the police everything. The video. The fake signatures. The insurance policy. The foreclosure notices. The district attorney called it a slam dunk. Richard was charged with attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, and kidnapping. Because of the premeditation, the insurance policy, the judge denied bail. Chloe cut a deal. She testified against her father to reduce her sentence. She admitted that Richard had promised to pay off her student loans and buy her a condo if she helped him. She got 5 years in prison and lost her nursing license permanently. Richard got 20 years. The notary lost his license and faced probation. As for the estate? The court appointed me as Grandma's legal guardian and conservator. Part 14, Rebirth, estimated word count, 800 words, 6 months later. I parked my car in the driveway of the estate. But it didn't look like a fortress anymore. The gates were open. The overgrown hedges in the back had been trimmed. The house looked like a home again. Mark was on the front porch, sweeping leaves. He waved as I walked up. How is she? Mark asked. She's great, I smiled. She just fired the new gardener because he planted the petunias in the wrong spot. She's back to her old self. We walked into the sunroom. Grandma was there, sitting in her wheelchair, but she wasn't staring at the wall. She was painting. A canvas was set up in front of her. She was painting the garden, the colors vibrant and messy and alive. "Hi, Grandma," I kissed her cheek. "Elena," she smiled, dabbing blue paint onto the canvas. "Look. I finally got the sky right." I looked at the painting. It was beautiful. "It's perfect," I said. We sat there for a while, drinking tea. No green smoothies. Just Earl Grey. "I've been thinking," Grandma said, putting down her brush. "About the house." "What about it?" I asked. "Do you want to sell it?" "We can, if it's too much." "No," she shook her head. "Richard wanted to sell it to build condos. He wanted to erase it." She looked at me. "I want you to have it, Elena. Not when I die. Now." "Grandma, I can't." "Take it," she insisted. "Turn it into something good. An art studio. A sanctuary. I don't care. Just make sure it's full of life again." I looked at Mark. He smiled and nodded. "Okay," I said, tears pricking my eyes. "Okay." Part 15, Conclusion, estimated word count, 500 words. That day changed everything for me. I used to be the girl who was afraid to speak up. The girl who desperately wanted her father's approval. The girl who thought peace meant staying silent. But I learned that peace isn't silence. Peace is safety. And sometimes, you have to go to war to get it. My father sits in a cell now. He still writes me letters, blaming me for ruining the family. I burn them unopened. Chloe calls sometimes, crying, asking for money for the commissary. I blocked the number. I chose my family. My family is Mark, who broke a window to save a life. My family is Grandma, who fought through a chemical fog to throw a glass of water. And my family is me. We turned the estate into a community art center for seniors. We teach painting, pottery, and music. The house is always full of laughter now. It's loud. It's messy. And it's safe. I thought I was just going to a birthday party. But I ended up finding my voice. So, if you are listening to this, and you have a gut feeling that something is wrong, even if it's family, especially if it's family, don't ignore it. Don't be polite. Be difficult. Be loud. Break a window if you have to. Because the only thing worse than causing a scene is watching the people you love disappear while you stay silent. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to stand up to a family member to do the right thing, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Stay safe, everyone. And keep your eyes open.